slightly more than what we are producing, the sheer number of revenue coming from taxes, the industry itself, as well as countless other sources of money will simply crash the economy, and an outright ban of this is simply not feasible. To put that in perspective, let's go back to the 18th Amendment of the United States Constitution back then, which banned alcohol. That amendment was notorious for the fact that it did not work. Black market simply just rose up and took the place, which is even worse. And even if, in the best case scenario, you somehow contained cigarettes and tobacco nearly entirely, the people who actually smoke and really use tobacco, they will simply find another source of addiction, which might even be worse, such as drugs or alcohol. Now, I'd also like to point out that even though our team is in no way saying that tobacco and cigarettes are really good for the human body, we are suggesting that an outright ban is not feasible. An outright ban on itself is not feasible in many ways, including the fact that it is neglecting the power of education. Education is often neglected in how important it can be in these types of situations. And while oftentimes you might argue that education is already being implemented, we are simply not doing enough. In fact, education on its own could potentially help to limit the problem and limit the number of teenagers who are actually smoking and using the tobacco. If we can limit that number, then we could potentially phase out the actual use of cigarettes and tobacco without the necessarily huge amount of resources that are being destroyed by the absolute ban. Finally, I'd like to point out that even though this is often exaggerated, it is often true that simply ending one's life a little sooner could potentially help reduce the cost of potentially huge amounts of money that are going into retirement. Currently, due to many parents around the world simply not wanting to have more children due to the rising costs of simply everything, the children's population is massively decreasing, and that means that the number of young people who are going to be supporting the older population is going to be smaller, which means that having a smaller older population could help a little.
Time. All right.